Fill a bowl with cold water, ice if you have it. Now hold your breath and put your face in it. Just for 10 seconds. Don't read ahead, do it. Feel that violent gasp your body wants to take, even though you're holding your breath on purpose. That sudden drop in your heart rate you can feel pounding in your neck. You didn't choose that response. You couldn't stop it if you tried. What you just felt was a 500 million year old survival circuit hijacking your entire nervous system in under 1 second, faster than you can consciously think the word cold. And here's the part almost nobody knows. That same reflex is now being studied as one of the most powerful tools we have for slowing down the biological clock inside every one of your cells. This isn't a wellness trend. It's physics, it's thermodynamics, it's evolution, wired directly into your bloodstream.
And by the end of this video, you'll understand why something as simple as cold water might be quietly rewriting how fast you age. Here's the strange part. Cold, by itself, is not dangerous. Your body has survived cold for millions of years. So why does it react like you're dying? The real question is, what exactly is being triggered? And why does the body treat a bowl of water like a 5-alarm emergency? To answer that, we have to go somewhere you wouldn't expect. Not your skin, not your blood, your face. Your face is not just skin over bone. It's wired with one of the densest clusters of sensory nerves in the entire human body, particularly around the eyes, forehead, and cheeks, all feeding into a single nerve called the trigeminal nerve. This organ is not what most people think it is. Most people assume the trigeminal nerve is just for sensation, feeling a mosquito land on your cheek. But scientists originally underestimated its real function. The trigeminal nerve is a direct line, a biological hotline, straight into your brainstem, the oldest, most primitive part of your brain, the part that doesn't wait for permission, the part that keeps you alive before your conscious mind even knows what's happening. When cold water hits your face, specialized thermoreceptors fire an emergency signal down this nerve. Within milliseconds, your brainstem activates something called the mammalian dive reflex. Picture what happens next, invisibly, inside you. Your heart rate drops immediately, sometimes by 10 to 25%, because your vagus nerve, the great wandering nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, floods your heart with a chemical brake pedal called acetylcholine. At the same time, blood vessels in your arms and legs constrict, physically squeezing blood inward, away from your limbs and toward your heart, lungs, and brain. Your body is doing something extraordinary. It's pretending you're about to drown. This reflex evolved to let mammals, seals, whales, even human infants survive underwater by rationing oxygen to only the organs that matter most for survival. But that's not the strange part. The strange part is this. You don't need to be underwater for this to happen. You just need cold contact with your face. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between swimming and splashing water in a sink. It reacts exactly the same way, full ancient protocol, activated by a kitchen faucet. And this is where everything changes. Because that same vagus nerve, the one slowing your heart, doesn't just talk to your heart, it talks to almost every organ in your body. Here's where it gets interesting. The vagus nerve isn't a single wire. It's a branching superhighway, connecting your brainstem to your heart, lungs, gut, liver, and immune system. So if cold water can activate it this violently, what else is it doing while your heart rate drops? What most people miss is that the vagus nerve isn't just about calming down. It's about repair. To understand why this matters for aging, we need to talk about something called chronic low-grade inflammation, sometimes nicknamed inflammaging by longevity researchers. Here's the picture. Inside your body right now, immune cells are constantly patrolling, releasing signaling molecules called cytokines. In small bursts, this is healthy. It's how you fight infections and heal wounds. But when this inflammatory signaling runs in the background for years, quietly, chronically, it becomes one of the primary drivers of aging itself. It damages the lining of blood vessels. It accelerates the shortening of telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of your DNA. It contributes to everything from heart disease to cognitive decline. This is where the vagus nerve re-enters the story, and this time in a much bigger role than most people realize. Researchers discovered something called the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. In simple terms, when the vagus nerve is stimulated, it releases acetylcholine near immune cells, and that chemical acts like a dimmer switch, physically telling those cells to stop producing excess inflammatory cytokines. Cold water exposure is one of the most powerful, non-invasive ways known to stimulate vagal tone, which means every time you do that facing cold water reflex, you are not just triggering a heart rate drop, you are sending a chemical signal that tells your immune system, stand down, stop the fire, repair, don't attack. But that's still not the biggest mystery, because if cold exposure only calmed inflammation, that would be interesting, but not extraordinary. The real story is happening at a much smaller scale, inside your cells, inside your mitochondria. Here's the question almost nobody asks. Why does cold exposure actually make your body generate more heat afterward?
You'd expect the opposite. You get cold, you should just warm back up, passively. Instead, something bizarre happens. Your body starts producing heat from the inside, using a process most people have never heard of, a process that may be one of the missing links in the entire science of longevity. Deep inside almost every cell in your body are mitochondria. The structures we were all taught in school were simply the powerhouse of the cell. What most people miss is that this description is almost embarrassingly incomplete. Mitochondria don't just produce energy. They are dynamic, adaptive organelles that respond directly to temperature, oxygen, and stress. And cold is one of the most potent signals they respond to. Here's what happens, and it is genuinely strange if you slow it down. When your body experiences cold stress repeatedly, it begins converting a type of fat called white fat, your typical storage fat, into a more metabolically active version called beige fat. Beige fat is packed with extra mitochondria, and those mitochondria contain a special protein called UCP1, or uncoupling protein 1. Normally, mitochondria burn fuel to produce a molecule called ATP, the energy currency of the cell. But UCP1 does something unusual. It deliberately uncouples that process, letting energy escape as pure heat instead of ATP. In other words, cold exposure trains your body to build cellular furnaces whose entire purpose is generating warmth from the inside out. But heat production alone isn't the aging connection. The real connection is what happens to the mitochondria themselves during this process. Repeated cold stress activates a cellular recycling system called mitophagy, where the body identifies old, damaged, poorly functioning mitochondria and breaks them down, clearing space for fresh, more efficient ones to be built. This matters because damaged mitochondria are one of the most well-established hallmarks of aging.
As we get older, mitochondria become less efficient, leak more oxidative byproducts, and contribute to cellular decline throughout the entire body: muscle, brain, skin, heart. Cold exposure appears to accelerate the turnover of old mitochondria for new ones. It's not just resistance to cold, it's cellular renovation, triggered by temperature itself. And here's where the story becomes stranger still. Everything we've covered so far, the dive reflex, the vagus nerve, inflammation control, mitochondrial renewal, all of it converges on the single most protected, most energy-hungry organ in your entire body, your brain. The brain makes up roughly 2% of your body weight, but consumes around 20% of your total energy. It is exquisitely sensitive to inflammation, oxidative stress, and mitochondrial decline, arguably more sensitive than any other organ you have. This is why the same mechanisms triggered by cold water exposure are now being studied in relation to neuroplasticity and cognitive longevity. Here's the layered mechanism, and it's worth slowing down for. The sudden physiological shock of cold triggers a sharp release of norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter tied to alertness, focus, and mood regulation. Some studies have recorded increases of 200 to 300% in circulating norepinephrine after cold water immersion, comparable to intense exercise, achieved in seconds rather than minutes. Norepinephrine doesn't just make you feel awake. At the cellular level, it appears to support the growth of new connections between neurons and may influence the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, a protein often described by researchers as fertilizer for the brain because of its role in forming and preserving neural pathways involved in learning and memory. This is the point where the story stops being about feeling refreshed after a cold shower. This is a survival circuit built to keep a drowning mammal's brain alive on minimal oxygen, being repurposed by modern science as a tool that may protect the aging brain from inflammation, support metabolic efficiency in neurons,
and preserve the very connections responsible for memory and identity. The body isn't finished yet either. Because vagal tone, the same signal cold water strengthens, is also linked to something called heart rate variability, a measurement increasingly used by longevity researchers as a proxy for biological resilience. Higher heart rate variability is associated with better cardiovascular health, better stress recovery, and, in multiple studies, correlates with lower biological, not just chronological, age. Which means this single reflex, activated by nothing more than cold water on your face, touches your cardiovascular system through vagal heart rate control, your immune system through the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway, your cellular energy systems through mitochondrial renewal and uncoupling, and your brain through neurotransmitter release and neuroplastic signaling. 4 systems, 1 trigger, seconds long. Step back and look at what actually happened in that bowl of cold water. A reflex older than language, older than tools, older than the human species itself, activates the moment cold touches your face. It was built for one purpose only: survival underwater in the ancient mammalian past. But evolution rarely deletes old machinery, it repurposes it. That same circuit now reaches into your heart, slowing it with vagal precision. It reaches into your immune system, quieting the chronic inflammatory fire that silently ages every tissue in your body. It reaches into your mitochondria, clearing out cellular debris and building new, more efficient energy factories from the inside out. And it reaches into your brain, sharpening focus and potentially reinforcing the very neural architecture responsible for memory and cognitive resilience. This is why cold water is now being taken seriously, not as a wellness fad, but as a repeatable physiological stimulus in labs studying aging, inflammation, and brain health. You didn't need a new pill. You didn't need an experimental therapy. You needed a bowl of water, cold enough to make you gasp, because somewhere inside you, in a part of your nervous system older than conscious thought, your body already knows how to fight aging. It's just been waiting for you to turn on the switch.